This short video will show you what updates we have made to the North Online onboarding process for new applications for individual clients, why is the change happening, information that needs to be uploaded, and some helpful tips for effectively completing the application form. Updates have been introduced to North Online to streamline the onboarding process for new applications of individual clients. The improvements will allow for easier, quicker, and accurate electronic verification of your client's identity. This only affects individual client application forms. It does not affect applications for companies, self-managed super funds, and family trusts. In addition to electronic verification of client ID, this video will show North Online's new capability for supporting third-party electronic signature and certificate, a new activity status called Proposal, the redesigned pre-submit documentation page, and updates to collateral. North Online will have the capability for electronic verification of client ID when applying a new individual account. Clients' identification documents will be verified against independent and reliable data sources, including Australian issuer records and globally trusted data sources. The new capability allows for online verification and real-time feedback on the client's proof of identification. There are 3 forms of client ID that can be electronically verified: Australian driver's license, Australian passport, and Medicare card. A new panel will display in the pre-submit documentation page. Using the radio buttons, you can choose whether to use electronic or manual verification for the client's identity. Prior to completing the North Online application form, you must obtain client consent for electronic verification of client identity, and this is captured in the application form. In North Online, you will need to make a declaration that they have received client consent. This can be done in the Tick to Confirm declaration section of the pre-submit documentation page. Once ticked, the Submit button will be enabled. North Online runs a background check before the application is submitted. In the pre-submit documentation page, you can enter the client ID details for the relevant ID sources received from the client. The number of ID sources to be prompted is dependent upon whether the background checks have passed or failed. If the client's background check has passed, only one client ID source will be required. The ID documentation options will be presented as radio buttons in the North Online pre-submit documentation screen. If the client's background check failed, 2 client ID sources will be required. The ID documentation options will be presented as checkboxes in North Online pre-submit documentation screen. A maximum of 4 retries is allowed per client ID source when electronically verifying the client ID details. After 4 failed attempts per ID source, electronic verification will be locked out for the ID that was used. You can try electronic verification using another ID source, and there is a total maximum number of 8 failed retries for all ID sources, or you can manually upload the certified client ID documentation. This will then be manually reviewed by North Operations. For joint account applicants, a second panel will be displayed for you to enter the second client's ID information. Please note that if a primary account holder provides the consent to electronic verification of ID in the application form, but the secondary account holder does not provide their consent, or vice versa, North Online will prompt you to manually upload the client ID documents for both primary and secondary account holders. Ideally, both clients would agree to have their client IDs verified electronically, as this will increase straight-through processing time and the new account will be placed in an active status. This is assuming that neither of the clients require further back-office assessment and are not found to be on a sanctions or any other watch list. If a client did not provide consent to electronic verification of their client ID documentation, you can manually upload the valid and certified client ID documents as per current process. On the other hand, if the client does not have an Australian driver's license, Australian passport, or Medicare card, you can also manually upload their other forms of valid and certified client ID documentation into North Online. Once the application has been submitted, documentation will be manually processed by North Operations. The application will be placed in a proposal activity status, and funds cannot be allocated or invested until the client's identity has been successfully verified by North Operations. When opening a new account for an existing client, North Online will not prompt you to electronically or manually verify the client ID. The pre-submit documentation page will not display any panel requesting for electronic verification or manual upload of certified client ID documents if the primary and secondary account holders are already existing clients for the new joint account. North Online can now accept proof of advice fee consent provided by the client as third-party digitally signed form and certificate when applying for a superannuation or pension new account. Approved third-party electronic signature and certificate software providers are DocuSign, Iris, and Adobe. To use the new capability in North Online, you'll need to obtain your own license for these third-party solutions outside of North Online. As you can see on this screen, if the client provides proof of advice fee consent via third-party digitally signed form and certificate, you will need to upload the digitally signed form and certificate. You do not need to upload the signed application form and the certified client ID with signature that matches the application form if the client provided consent using DocuSign, Iris, or Adobe. However, if the client provides a paper-based signature as proof of advice fee consent, you can still upload into North Online both the signed application form and the certified client ID with signature that matches the application form. Please remember to retain your own copy of the investment advice fees form if the new application is for IDPS. You do not need to upload the investment advice fees form into North Online. Once you have submitted an application and the client has successfully passed the background check and client ID verification, the account will be placed in an active status. However, the following message will be displayed once you've submitted an application and it has been placed in a proposal status. This means that external money in transactions will not be allocated. That is, there will be a stop on money in transactions. Funds cannot be allocated or invested until the client's identity has been fully verified by back office. Business communications such as the welcome letter and credentials will neither be generated nor sent. You will have read-only access to the North Online client and account screens and associated functions. You will be able to search for the account in the account summary, but the screens will be presented in a read-only format. In addition to the new capabilities for electronic verification of client ID and support for third-party electronic signature and certificate, a new activity status called Proposal has been introduced on North Online. A new application can be placed in proposal status due to the following reasons. The client has not given their consent for electronic ID verification, and you've had to manually upload the certified client ID documents. The client does not have an Australian driver's license, Australian passport, or Medicare card, but has another form of ID, and hence you've had to manually upload the certified client ID document. You've been locked out of electronic verification of the client's ID as the maximum number of attempts have been reached, and hence you've had to manually upload the certified client ID documents. On rare occasions, North Online may be unable to connect to the electronic verification system when you submit the application. Or lastly, the background check that was run during electronic registration and verification of the client identity details yields a result that the client may potentially be in a sanctions watch list. Once a new application is placed in proposal status, you'll have read-only access to client and account screens and associated functions. For example, If you do a client search for the client of a new application, you may notice that the information displayed in the View All Accounts tab and panels will indicate that the account is in proposal status. You will not be able to edit any information as the application has been submitted and you will be in the review and assessment process by back office. When you view more information in the Snapshot tab, a message will be displayed to indicate the client's identity is being manually verified by North Back Office and funds cannot be allocated or invested as the account is in a proposed state until verification has been completed. While an application is in proposed status, you can view the progress in the In Progress tab of Activity Management. If the application is in proposal status and in the event that back office cannot validate the client's identity, the application will be rejected. The activity will be moved to the Completed tab and a description will be displayed showing application rejected. You will be sent an email informing you of the application status. While the application is in proposal status, you can monitor and track its progress in the In Progress tab of the Activity Management screen. If the client identity was successfully verified and background check result is that the client is not on a sanctions watch list or another watch list, then the new account is open and becomes active. The following message will be displayed in the Completed tab of Activity Management. Once the account is active, funds can be allocated or invested. Business communications such as welcome letter and credentials will be generated and sent. You will once again gain full access to the North Online client and account screens and associated functions. To recap, so far we've covered the following North Online enhancements: electronic verification of the client's ID for new applications for individual clients, support for third-party electronic signature for proof of advice fee consent, and the new proposal activity status. Let's now cover the other improvements to North Online. The pre-submit documentation page has been redesigned for new individual applications. It has been improved to include a simpler and easier to navigate user interface when completing new individual applications. You'll be able to easily download and review the required documents for the new application, and the page will display the remaining tasks that need to be completed before submitting an application. Client details are displayed in the pre-submit documentation page, and this gives you the opportunity to correct a client's details without having to navigate back to step 2 of the North Online wizard. If there are discrepancies between the information entered in the client details page or panel versus what was entered in the client ID source for electronic verification, then you'll be prompted with inline messages such as the one shown on screen. Another change in the pre-submit documentation page is that if only one account is being applied for, the account list will not be displayed. You may also notice that the documents to download have been repositioned to the top part of the page. When you have downloaded all of the required documents, a tick mark will be displayed. The Add Another Account button has also been repositioned to the right-hand portion of the pre-submit documentation page. When you apply for multiple accounts, clicking on the hyperlink in the account list will change the account in focus on the screen. In this same view, you will notice that the Remove button has been repositioned to be displayed beside the accounts. When there are multiple accounts, the Proof of Client Identity panel on the pre-submit documentation page will remain unchanged. Other sections will change depending on the account selected. Prior to the enhancements, the bank account details and/or tax details were displayed as pop-ups on the pre-submit documentation page. On the redesign page, when bank account details and/or tax details are required, the pop-ups have been replaced by separate panels within the pre-submit documentation page. As you may have seen earlier in the video, a new panel has been introduced for proof of advice fee consent in the pre-submit documentation page. In this panel, there are two options presented as radio buttons for proof of advice fee consent. These options are paper-based signature and third-party electronic signature. Note that this feature is already available for advice fees added on an existing account. If binding nominations are applicable, it will be shown in its own upload panel in the pre-submit documentation page. Additionally, the multiple tick boxes displayed for action required have been consolidated into a single tick to confirm tick box, and the action text has been updated. Using the North Online navigation wizard, on the second screen client details page, a new middle name field has been introduced. The middle name field is not mandatory. However, if a single character has been entered, a warning message will be displayed stating only one character has been entered. If the middle name has more than one character, please enter the client's full name to continue. The first name field will work the same way as it does for the previous given names field. Lastly, there's new terms and conditions in North Online and in the application form for individual clients. These new terms and conditions will be displayed when you log into North Online. The application forms have also been updated for IDPS, Super and Pension new accounts in MyNorth, iAccess and Generations. These changes are in relation to client consent for electronic verification of client identification and support for electronic signature for proof of client consent on advice fees. In summary, all of the North Online enhancements covered in this video are aimed at streamlining the onboarding process for new applications of individual clients so that clients can have a smoother onboarding experience and quicker access to North Online products and services. If you have any further questions regarding these changes, please contact your BDM or north@amp.com.au. Thank you for watching this video.